Hey guys, it's Kevin again, the story for the Vampire Diaries, Season 6, Episode 17, A Bird in a Glided Cage, Gilded Cage, and this was another great episode, and I have to say that I really like this. I like this episode, I think, a bit more than last week's. I thought last week's was great, but this episode was amazing. I mean, we really got to see a lot more of how Caroline and Stefan are going to be without humanity, and I really am liking the direction we're heading now, and especially the end of this episode. Oh my god. And of course, now we have to wait for another hiatus, which is really annoying. I don't like how they're doing, like, 2 episodes going off on a hiatus. It's really dumb, but the Vampire Diaries has done this before, and it's really annoying, but whatever. Let's just get in this episode because it was amazing. So, Caroline cleans the bar up after her party, and Enzo shows up and she yells at him for walking on her freshly mopped floor, and he calls her Cinderella and asks why she cares now, but of course, she cares because her humanity's gone and everything, so she tells him that she flipped her switch, and she says she wants to stay in college, so she needs to cover her tracks, and she says she has an audition tomorrow for the school musical, The Last 5 Years. Yes, that's the school musical, it's The Last 5 Years, and when she said that, I'm like, really? That's your school musical? I mean, if my school did The Last 5 Years, like, we couldn't do it. There's 2 people in the entire cast. You can't do that show on like, a school. But basically, she reminds him she's a drama major and asks why he's there. He says he needs his phone back and asks why she needs Sarah's number. And she says she blackmailed Stefan into switching off her humanity, of threatening her life, and says Sarah may or may not have survived Liam's game of operation. So Stefan comes home and tells Damon the rave was loud and lame, and Damon asks if there's anything he'd like to talk about, and Stefan right away, Damon can tell something there is not right about him. He doesn't realize that his humanity is gone. He just can tell there's something off about him, and Stefan asks where Jeremy's hunter gear is, grenades and crossbows, and Damon comes at him with a syringe of knockout stuff, but Stefan spots it and snaps Damon's wrist, then tells him to stay out of his way today, zooms off, and Damon curses. He has no idea what's going on with him. And then Sarah wakes in the hospital in Joe's care, who tells her she drank too much last night, and she says she needs to get home. And I like that they covered it up by just saying that she drank too much, because, of course, Sarah is very unaware of what's going on between all of them. She doesn't know, I mean, she knows about vampires, things like that, but they didn't tell her what's going on. I find that very interesting. So, basically, he says unless she wants another Salvatore vampire at their wedding, Joe says that maybe they should elope, because of course, they want to talk about their wedding. And I like that Alaric and Joe did sit down and talk about their wedding. And she says she's thinking baby names, and Alaric is caught off guard. He says Junior, and she tells him to get lost. And I really love their bonding. I have to say, I love them as a couple. I can't wait to see their wedding. I really hope their wedding does happen. I hope this is not something where we wait for a wedding and then it doesn't happen. I hope that this is a wedding that does happen, because I really like these two together. And again, they're making a sudden move, but I think it's a good move. I think they're making the right move, definitely. Even though it's a very sudden move, I think that it is the right move for them to make, because these two are very good together. I definitely like them together, and I really like the scenes we've been having with them. So I'd love to see more of these two together. I really do love them together. I love Alaric and Joe. So then we see that Damon is being the sofa when Elena shows up. He says he's trying to let his rage out in a healthy way. He says Stefan without his humanity is one step away from Stefan the Ripper. Now, of course, he knows that Stefan doesn't have his humanity because Elena told him, and Elena says they lost their chance to spark Caroline's humanity since he was her link to humanity, and Damon then fills Elena in on the fact that his mom, Lillian, is in witch prison in 1903. And, of course, he wants to know why she's there, because, of course, Kai told him some of the details last week, but I still feel like, I knew Kai, there's more to it, and Damon can tell there's definitely more to it, and he says that she's a vampire and a ripper, and Elena's shocked, and Damon says Stefan always was a mama's boy, and Elena asks how much. Damon says they both loved her, and she was their world, and Elena wants to retrieve Lillian to try and fix another. Basically try and bring Stefan back to see if maybe that will get his humanity switch back, which actually is a very good plan, because, I mean, if he sees his mother, that'll get him to turn his humanity switch back on. But, of course, he's not going to really listen to them, because he's going to listen to Caroline right now, because what does he want to do? He wants to be with Caroline, so what's he going to do? He's going to listen to Caroline. So Damon says you don't use one Ripper to try and fix another, and Damon says maybe Bonnie would help. He goes to see her, and she rants at him, and he says sorry for being a dick, and she says they need her, and Kai both to get Lily. Now, of course, she still wants nothing to do with Kai. She's really upset with the whole Damon and Kai situation, and basically, they need to get Lillian to switch stuff and then to switch Caroline, and she offers her blood, but Damon says she could come along, and Bonnie then talks to Kai and asks about the 1903 Ascendant. He says it's a lot of studying of texts under magic cloaking spells, But then he pulls it out of his pocket, and he says when Damon told him about Mama Salvatore, he started looking for it. And he says he doesn't even need a celestial event, says he'll go if Bonnie goes along. He says the guided age is exciting. She says she would rather die of cholera than spend an afternoon with him, and Kai tells her that she's much more likely to die at Caroline's hand than from cholera, and that stops her cold. So Caroline's at her audition, and when I realized that she was singing the last 5 years, I was so happy to see that. I think that Candace Nicole, I've said this before, she's an amazing singer. She really is. She needs to make a CD. Whenever the Vampire Diaries is over, Candace Nicole needs to get into music. I mean, she's an amazing singer, and she sounded amazing on Still Hurting, really. She sounded amazing. She's no Anna Kendrick, but she sounded amazing, and she tells the guy she crushed it, but then Stefan is there and kills the theater director, and I like what he says to her. I do like where this is heading, and I like what he's kind of telling her. Because he mocks her and says that this good student routine is not going to work, and he reminds her that she ruined his life, and she says with his switch off, he shouldn't care, and Stefan says, unlike her, he doesn't have an elaborate system to keep him in catch, which is true. I mean, she doesn't have a humanity, so why does she care? I think it's because she is just so focused, and, Caroline's just so level-headed that she needs to have some sort of something to keep her going, and I do understand why she's doing what she's doing. And basically, he tells her he's going to make sure his life falls apart, and so will hers, and he shows her his bloody hands, and says he's a control freak with nightmares, and he says he will undo her one day at a time until she breaks. So he swipes a bloody finger across her mouth. She's tempted by the blood and Stefan both. He takes off, and she looks concerned. And I thought that was very interesting. I mean, the fact that Stefan is basically telling her what to do when it seemed like she was telling him what to do, I just find it really interesting overall. So Bonnie cuts her hand open. Kai tells her that Crocodile Dundee called and wants his knife back, and she says that joke is over. Elena wants to go, but Damon says no, and she gets her way, and it's Bonnie and Kai. And Damon and Elena head to the 1903 prison to check on Mama Salvatore, and Bonnie says it can go ahead and find his mom while she and Kai find the Mirror of the Ascendant. So Elena doesn't want to leave her with Kai, but Bonnie says he's goodish now with the new leaf, and she kind of starts to trust him, and I like that Bonnie is starting to trust him because, I mean, Kai really has turned around. He is changing. He doesn't know why he's changing. All he knows is that he is changing. He is turning around, and it's weird. He even admits that, yeah, it's kind of weird that he's just randomly turning around, but he is turning around, and Bonnie does need to listen to him, and I like that Bonnie decides that, what, I'm going to listen to him, and I like that, she decided that she was going to listen to him, because she needed to eventually listen to him. He does make some good points here, and Kai asks if Bonnie really buys his new leaf, and she says hell no, but they need to find her mom, and for a second there, I'm like, is Kai pretending to be good, or is he simply just good now? And Stefan goes to get on his motorcycle, finds that she's taking it apart. So we get that answer a little later, but basically Stefan then gets on his motorcycle, finds that she's taking it apart. She tells Stefan to go away or else. He tells her she's great at control and terrible at revenge. He says he tore her director's head off with his teeth while she took both his bolt off his bike, and he tells her she's an embarrassment to humanity-free vampires, and so she kicks a hole in the gas tank, and she's not very threatening, I have to say. I mean, he wants her to be a lot more threatening at this no humanity thing, but she was so creepy last week that I kind of like that they just played around with it in this episode. It was really funny to see especially because of what people with no humanity usually do, and just for Caroline to be like this bitchy character, I really love seeing that. So Joe calls Alaric and says based on his own name, he can't pick the baby name, and Enzo shows up and he ends the call. Because, Alaric's such a weird name, and she doesn't really want her kid to be named Alaric, so Enzo asks Alaric if he has enough vervain to get Blondie and her sidekick into the Salvatore cellar, and Alaric reminds her that he's human now, and I like that he reminded him that, and Enzo calls him a coward, and Alaric says he has weapons at his place, and Elena and Damon are at his childhood home, and she admires a baby photo, but he says it's Stefan, then she shows her one of him, and he says they're only there to nab his mom, then heads back to Stefan's switch, and Elena says Stefan was a ripper and is fine now, and Damon says his mom died when they buried her empty coffin. As far as she's concerned, then Lillian is there. And we see Lillian, and he says hello to her, and Lillian is completely stunned. She tells them that she long since gave up her marking time on the calendar, and Elena says it's been more than a century, and Damon says he would have stopped by but thought she was dead and buried, and she says she died in a TB ward after a vampire nurse gave her blood, and she says she was attacked by a coven of witches in 1903 and woke up here, and Damon says she must have pissed off a lot of people. So basically exactly what Kai told him, and I was surprised that Kai actually told the truth once, because I didn't really think Kai was the most trustworthy person, but you know what? Kai told the truth here, and I thought that was really good. So she says that night seems like a forever ago. She says she is down to the last of her blood and has 2 drops a week to stay alive. And Elena says it sounds miserable. Lilly says she heard they turned during the war. And he says Stefan ripped their dad's throat out. And she says she hated that man. And Damon says so much that she abandoned her kids with him and went out and joined the Ripper coalition. And I find it kind of interesting that they hated their dad because it kind of makes me think of the originals with Michael. It just kind of made me think about that. But Caroline then hears a noise, goes to investigate, and it's Stefan, and he says he brought her a peace offering. He throws a grenade at her, then comes to her with a stake. He tells her this is how a vampire with no humanity is supposed to ask. That's true. That's how a vampire with humanity is supposed to be, but she's not like that. She tells him to stop, and he tells her let it go, and says it will feel good. She tells him she won't let him ruin her life, and he says he'll end it. He goes to stake her, and she bites him, flips him, then stabs him, and it's just really crazy over. I mean, they both have no humanity, so they both really don't give a shit what they're doing to each other, but still. So Kai tells Bonnie that his guilt keeps him up at night and begs her to give him another chance. He grabs her hands, tells her to listen, and he drew blood when he hit her head. He says he didn't mean to do it, and Bonnie says even if he's telling the truth, the old him is still in there. And I like that she is not buying it because it just seems kind of sudden. It really does. And I do have to agree with Bonnie when she's saying, you know what, I don't exactly believe your new leaf. So I definitely really enjoyed that. So Lane and Damon tell Lilly that they need to fix Stefan, and she says she'll alert the others. She says she assumed he knew about her traveling companions, and she brings them to meet some other vampires that sit around a table, looking like dried-up vampires, and kind of disgusting, I have to say. When we saw that, the dried-up vampire house, that was disgusting, and Alaric and Enzo are weaponed up, head to hunt the no humanity vampires, and I think this is interesting that they're going to hunt down no humanity vampires, and I think that should be their thing now, is hunt down no humanity vampires. And Alaric asks why he's there since he hates Enzo, and he says he has a whole revenge thing planned against Stefan, and can't have that was his humanity off. And Alaric tells Enzo he thinks his life is sad and lonely, and Enzo saves Alaric's life, sounds lovely, girl, kid, death, and Caroline is dragging Stefan down the hall when a girl asks if Stefan is okay, and he springs up, throws a stake into the girl's stomach. He tells her, no saving stranger. She smacks him back, tells the girl to run. She lectures Stefan, but he hears a noise and shushes her. They hide, and then Alaric sees a bottle bomb, and Enzo says bollocks, and whisks them away both before blowing up. And Elena asks about the other vampires, and she says they were with her on the boat that night, and Damon asks if they're Rippers too, and Lilly says they saved her from that part of herself, and she says she had to confront the animal she had become, and says her friends sacrificed their rations for her, and she says she learned to control her bloodlust so she would have enough to wake them. And she says they made her feel human again. She goes to get the blood to revive them, and Damon says his mother is not just a Ripper, but an insane Ripper. And when he says insane Ripper, he means it, because Elena spots the Ascendant and asks why Bonnie isn't there. Damon says Bonnie isn't looking for the Ascendant, and Bonnie tells Kai that maybe part of her deep down believes there's a silver gold in her. And he turns his back, and she stabs him in the back. He asks what she's doing. She says she's stabbing in the back after he trusted her, and she says she's going to leave him there all alone until he wants to kill himself, because she wanted to kill herself. There was a period of time when she was in 1994 and she wanted to kill herself, and it's understandable why she's doing all this to him. I mean, really, in a lot of ways, he does deserve this. I mean, he left her there, he tortured her, just everything he did to her. He really does deserve what she's doing to him. So, at the same time, while you feel bad for him, it's like, you know what, he deserves it. And I think Kai realizes that, but at the same time, he really wants just to, to get her to trust him. So Kai tells her he's changed, and she tells him she has too. She goes to stab him again, but he magic himself away from her. And really, Bonnie has changed. She's just become a much stronger woman. And, I mean, seasons ago, Bonnie would not have survived without, Elena and Damon and all of them. She wouldn't have survived without them. And just seeing how strong Bonnie's become, I love it. And she looks around frustrated. Caroline checks on Alaric and Enzo and says they're still breathing. Stefan says Damon must be busy if he sent the B team and he wants to kill them. But she grabs the gun because he thought that Damon and Elena, of course, would come to rescue them. But it's not. It's Alaric and Enzo. And he thinks that they're working with Damon and Caroline when really they're going after Stefan and Caroline. That's really why they're there. So Stefan says fine and walks off. She follows him as he comes into the girls' room. He says he taught her how to control her bloodlust, and he compels the girls to stand still and not scream, and he bites her neck, feeds her, and Caroline says tempting her isn't working. He says deep down they're the same, and then he bites the girl again. He feeds messily, and Caroline struggles. her hunger flares, and she fights it, then digs in. Stefan snaps back, lets her feed, shoves the girl aside, pins him to the wall with a kiss, flips it on her, and consumes her with a burning kiss and lifts her against him. So they have sex, and I thought that was good. I mean, they both have no humanity, and I wanted their first time that they had sex to be, sweet and everything. But of course, they have no humanity, so they really don't care. And I really that was one of the hottest scenes in the Vampire Diaries ever, I have to say. I mean, seriously, in terms of hot sex scenes, that was one of them. And Damon then tells Lilly that they're down a witch and can't take them all. And Bonnie says they need to go, and then his mom takes off, and she doesn't want to leave her friends. She goes to wake her companions, but Damon slaps the bottle out of her hand, and she says they're her family, and that pisses him off. He says those freaks may be her family, and says Stefan is his, and he will leave her there to rot if she doesn't come on alone. And Bonnie starts to spell as instructed, and then Damon shows up with Lilly, and an injured Kai staggers close and calls to Bonnie, but then they're gone, and he's stuck there in the 1903 prison, and Enzo comes to see Sarah in the hospital, and compliments her hospital gown, calling it a negligee, I think it's called, and she says she saw a text and asked if they met last night. He says it was a mistake to bring her into his life and says it was loneliness. He then says that she was a pawn in a game and he's lost interest in playing and says she deserves better. He calls her Sarah Salvatore and she asks why he called her that. And Joe checks Alaric and smacks him, then says she's marrying an idiot. She says she needs him alive for 18 years. Then he can run around with guns and knives and be an idiot. And she says fine. I thought that was really funny. So Lilly sits in shock in front of a computer. She asks him to teach her, and he says that's more a Stefan thing. And she says an angel did visit Stefan the night of her funeral, and she says she had just turned and wanted to see her boys, and she says she leaned down to whisper in Stefan's ear. She heard his blood and wanted to attack, so she fled for their sake, and that's understandable why she left them. She left because she didn't want to kill them. She had this weird craving for them, and she didn't want to kill them. She says no matter how deeply he felt their absence, she felt theirs twice as much because she wanted to be with them. She just had this craving for their blood, and she didn't know where it was coming from, and that's why she left. So Damon says good to know. He tells her to get some sleep. She says she's looking forward to getting to know them, but wants the ones she left behind. She asks when they can go back, and he says soon. He tells her that her prison world isn't going anywhere, which it really isn't, and Kai then staggers into the vampire's nest and is terrified. He curses, looks more closely at them, and asks, what the hell are you? The one that got a small drop of blood before Lilly left reaches out, grabs Kai by the neck. Damon catches Elena with a baby photo of him. She stole it. She says she likes seeing that side of him, but Damon says Lilly is just a means to get Stefan back, and she says it's never a waste of time to look for the good in someone, and he says she ran off and left her kids to be a dead murdered vampire. She said it's a good thing they have forever, and kisses him. And I thought it was just a really sweet scene overall. I just love those two together. I've said before, those two are just adorable. Stefan and Caroline are naked in bed. She says he's terrible, and I love that she's like, you're terrible. She never wants to have sex with him again. He says control is overrated. He asks where her shirt is. He says it's near the girl they left bleeding out in the hallway. She giggles and tells him he's right. She says his way is much more fun. She rolls on top of him, kisses him deeply. Damon's kissing Elena. They're about to have sex, but then Bonnie walks in. Not really a good time. And she says awkward timing, and Elena says she has to go check on Rick, and Alaric and takes off, and Damon says it's better be good. Bonnie thanks him for helping her find closure today, and I love the way this episode ended. The cliffhanger here, this is going to be very interesting. I'm very interested in seeing where this goes and where exactly we're headed with this. Because Damon switches on the water and says there's a crazy woman upstairs who wants to go back there, and they agree they're not going back. He switches off the water, and Bonnie says she has a gift from him from 1994, and says she would have given it to him earlier, but he was being an ass. And it's the cure. The cure is back. Yeah, the cure is back, and she says she knows he wanted it for Elena, and Damon asks what if he doesn't want it for her now, and because, of course, he wanted for her probably back then because of how, Elena wanted nothing to do with him and things like that, but now he really doesn't want it. So Bonnie says it's none of her business and said it's up to him. She squeezes his hand and goes, and Damon looks very thoughtful. So now Damon has a real big decision to make. Does he want to use this cure? Who's he going to use it on? And I love that the cure is back. The cure storyline is one of my favorite storylines the Vampire Diaries has ever done, because it was just such an interesting storyline. Of course, Catherine ended up getting the cure the last time, and of course Catherine's dead now, so I don't know who's going to get the cure this time, but I'm very interested in seeing who's going to get the cure, because I just find it to be very interesting overall, the whole cure storyline, and now we have to wait till April 12th, so that's great. April 12th, whatever. Yeah, not April 12th, April 19th, I think it was something like that, but April 19th, we have to wait till then, and it's pretty crazy that they keep going on these weird hiatuses, but there's a lot to talk about, definitely. I really want to talk about Stefan and Caroline. Do you guys feel they have something right now, or are they just, like, so out of their, regular personas that they just like each other? I mean, we know that they do like each other, but them having sex, is that actually going to happen in real life, or did Caroline mean what she said to him? I don't know. We'll see what happens there. Lilly. Now that Lilly is back, is she going to be able to convince Stefan to turn back on his humanity switch? I don't know what's going to happen there, but I like that we found out that she really does care about them. She just had to leave because she didn't want to hurt them, and I think that's really good overall. I definitely really enjoyed that. Damon and Elena, I just love those two together. I think they're great. But what is he going to do with this cure? Who's he going to give it to? I think really the only possible option right now is Caroline and Stefan. Give it to one of them. Their humanity is back. So, but here's the thing. If they do that, then if they die, they die. So that's not going to be good. And it looks like in the next episode, Caroline's going to try to get blood from, like, Matt and Tyler. She's going to use them, which is going to be very interesting. Enzo and Alaric, I actually really like these two working together. I said before, I thought the storyline was boring, but now that they have Alaric involved, I definitely really enjoy it. Alaric and Joe, I love them talking about their wedding plans. I thought it was some of the funniest parts of the episode was seeing them together. They're just so good together, and I love seeing those two together. They work so well, and I think the actors, they just work so well together. Really, they do, and as far as Kai goes, I like seeing Kai tell Bonnie that he is serious and that he has changed, but I think it's gonna take a lot for Bonnie to actually fully trust him, and that makes sense why. I mean, he tortured her and everything, and he kind of does, as I said before, he deserves what's happening to him. So with Bonnie torturing him, he definitely deserves it, and that really is his karma. So I like that's happening to him. And I guess the only thing I'll talk about, the only other thing I'll talk about is what is going to happen with Caroline and Stefan. What is their real mission going to be? Are they going to try to kill all these people? As they're now Rippers now. So what's going to happen to them? We'll see what happens there. I'm very interested in seeing, what exactly they're going to do now, what their real mission is, because we see that, Stefan clearly wants Caroline to... Stefan clearly has a much more violent agenda than Caroline does, and I find that very interesting. But now they're starting to listen to each other, so I just find it overall all really interesting. I think it's all really well done. I think they're handling it all really, really well. But overall, guys, another great episode. Absolutely loved it. Can't wait till April 19th. Let me know what you guys saw this episode. I'll see you guys in my next video, which will be for another movie review. So I'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.